Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we are finishing off the look at the Ottoman Army supplement that I've created. Now I've had some feedback on this already. I'm going to do a video at the later on in the month and we'll go through some of the questions, some of the feedback. I've already changed some things, but yeah, I mean as it stands we're going with the documents that I've got here, but I'll re-upload them at the end of the month with the changes made to them. Now, those of you who've seen and listened to a lot of my videos may notice that I've got a particularly husky voice at the moment. That's because I've got terrible cold. So I'm just getting over it at the moment. Shouldn't be too bad. But the show must go on. So even as bunged up and horrible as I am, I'm still recording this video. So apologies if the audio's not quite the crisp, dulcet tones that it normally is. I'm pleased to say it's not the coof. I've had a couple of lateral flow tests. They've all come back negative, and I've had both my pokes, and I obviously got it this time last year as well. So it's not that, so that's nice. It's just a particularly nasty bout of flu. And that's particularly exciting because this weekend, this Sunday, it is Partisan in Newark. It's the first Wargaming show that I've been to in at least 18 months, possibly longer. Cannot wait. I'm really, really looking forward to it. It's down in Newark. Well, it's down for me. It's in Newark. And, yep, I'll be there. I'll be wearing my Napoleon's Cypher t-shirt. So if you see me, come up and say hello. I don't bite unless I'm hungry. And they do quite good food there, so I shouldn't be too hungry. So I hope to see you guys then. But anyway, on with the subject of today's video. And we are looking at the Ottoman artillery, or as I've called it here, the word of Allah. I decided I thought I'd get a bit more of this cool Indiana Jones stuff in there. I'm not sure how well it'll go over. But there you go. So the first page, as with the previous document, I'm not going to read these out verbatim. You can read them on the screen. You can either pause the video, you can screenshot them, or I've uploaded the files. Now, in the last video, I said I'd try and upload them to the page. I've not been able to do that, but they are on a couple of Napoleonic Facebook pages, so I will leave links to those in the description down below. So the first page is just a quick blurb about the Ottoman artillery, just to give you a little bit of background to them. There's a couple of paintings, one contemporary one by the look of it, of some Ottoman artillery. I think that was in a battle against the Persians, actually, in the 1760s. So slightly before our time, but as I keep saying, you can, for a lot of the guys, not so much the artillery, but for a lot of the guys, you can find guys from, 1308, and they'll be quite, so maybe not 1308, but 1408, and they'll be in pretty much the same uniforms as they are in this period. So it works quite nicely. And the second page is where we've got the juicy stuff. This is where the stats for the Ottoman artillery come in. Now you'll see there are 4 types of artillery here. There's light, split field, full field, and position. Now, just to quickly go over what it says in the text, the light artillery, they are the French 6-pounders that were given to them by the French artillery observers that were sent. Well, I say artillery observers. They were more, trainers, and they taught the Ottomans how to use the modern artillery techniques. So they had 4 of those in a normal field battery, but they did sometimes detach them in order to keep up with the infantry. So you can field those as a separate battery. We've got the field split, so that's a normal field battery. They've had those French 6-pounders taken out of them. We've got the field full, which is the 6 Ottoman cannons and the 4 French cannons. And we've got position, and that's the humongous behemoth cannons that are not really that practical on the tabletop, but they look awesome. They're good fun. I've got a model I got in a Kickstarter recently, so I added the rules just because they're cool. I want to use them. So the batteries for the Ottomans were absolutely humongous. They had 10 guns per battery. Most European ones at this era would either have 6, usually 8, but they would be a lot smaller calibers than the ones that the Ottomans used. The Ottomans would also mix 3 different calibers within a battery as well. The Europeans would tend to just have the 1 caliber with perhaps a 2nd caliber if they had howitzers in the battery as well. So you can see we've got, if we look at the stats for them, we've got the light and the field split artillery. They're just your standard artillery stats. Now they've got a stamina of 2, and that represents that the Ottoman artillery, they were actually a little bit better than European artillery. I should say the individual artilleryman was a little bit better. Yeah, ish. It's difficult to quantify really, but the artillery had been the main arm of the Ottoman army for so long that they were actually pretty well trained and quite confident in their own abilities. So that's why I've given them the 2 stamina. But they've got some special rules. We'll talk about special rules at the end. The next one, the Field Full Battery, that's 431. So that's quite a lot higher than normal. Now, this is because the Ottomans, as I said earlier on, they had large batteries. They had 10-gun batteries. So the short range and the medium range, they represent the weight of those extra 2 guns firing as opposed to a European battery. The reason they only get 1 dice at long range is because, as I said, the majority of the guns in that battery would be small or medium, French 6-pounders or an Ottoman equivalent, but they did have 4 quite heavy guns, so that represents the extra at the medium range, and that would be the one that fires at long range. So that's why I've given them the 1 there. And then for the position, I've got 6 at close range, 2 at medium, and 2 at long range. Now, 6 may sound like a lot, and don't get me wrong, it is a lot. But the sheer size of these cannons, if you could pack them with canister... Now, I'll be honest, I don't know if they did pack them with canister. I have read accounts where they packed them with all sorts of, like, detritus and stones and all sorts of stuff they had lying around. I don't know if they had specific canister shots. But if you've got a cannon that's got a 25-inch breech, like the Dardanelles gun did, and you fire that canister at people, it's going to cause a big old mess. Speaking of which, let's get on to the special rules. So the position gun has... We'll start from the bottom and work our way up. The position gun has the enormous gun special rule. As I said, these can be up to 25 inches wide. I've got on the bottom of the page there a picture of the Dardanelles gun. It's actually in Hampshire, near Portsmouth, I think, at the moment. It got given to us in the 19th century. So that fired a ball that was 2,265 pounds. That's a lot. I mean, that's 75 times the heaviest gun that you would find on, say, a Royal Navy ship, something like that. It's a big old piece, that one. So the idea there is you effectively get no morale saves against them. If you're in cover and you're at long range, you might do, but other than that, you're not getting anything. If you're at close range, even if you're the Imperial Guard in column of attack, you're getting absolutely no saves against those 6 dice it's going to fire at you. Now, the next one we've got is a large battery. I seem to be going through these in a bit of a random order, actually. So the next one we've got is large battery. As I said, they are 10-gun batteries. I've put an idea for modelling them on there. You go with that, maybe not. I suggest 4 guns. That is quite a lot, so you could probably get away with just using 3, to be honest. But that just represents the fact that they've got those extra stats, and that's the reason, because they're a large battery. Fieldworks, you can see, it says, see the Janissary rules above. So if you look at the first supplement that we did, then the rules for those are in there under the Janissaries, because they also enjoyed themselves some field fortifications. I tend to find that armies that really enjoy field fortifications and have loads of labourers on hand to dig them, so they don't actually have to, tend to enjoy them a lot more than the armies who have to dig those trenches themselves. Now, the last 2 special rules are one positive, one negative one. The positive one is crossfire, and that means that unless a unit is firing, a battery is firing exactly 90 degrees to the enemy unit, so they're exactly parallel to them, then they count as enfilading them. So that means that they will re-roll their fails to hit. So that's quite a powerful rule, especially when you look at the range of cannons. They can reach out and touch quite a large part of the battlefield, especially with those tasty re-rolls. However, they've also got the pour powder special rule, and that means they are at -1 to hit at all times, unless it's at close range. So normally artillery have -1 to hit if they're at long range. For the Ottomans, it's basically at medium or long range. Now, I haven't put... I've said here specifically that it doesn't stack with -1 for firing at long range. That may change. That may be something that you guys want to talk about amongst yourselves and maybe bring in. I think that firing at -2 would be a little bit harsh, but I also can see the reason why you would, because it means that there's actually no real penalty for firing at long range than there is at medium range. So I can see that. I can not see that. You could even potentially have at long range you have to re-roll a single hit as well. Something like that. There's room for extra negative modifiers if you're firing at long range, is what I'm saying. I've not included them here, but it's up to you whether you want to do that in your gaming group. Quick shout out to the small box at the bottom. That is the Dardanelles gun. If you look halfway along it, you can't see it brilliantly well on that picture, but it actually screws together. It was so massive that they couldn't cast it in one go. So they cast it in two parts, but obviously that would create quite a weakness. So it screws together. I mean, this is the absolute ingenuity of the Ottomans. They cast this in the 15th century. I think it was like 1460, 62 or 64. So, I mean, this is a time where in Europe, our cannons are like an iron bell, effectively, strapped to a bit of wood. The Ottomans really, really leading the way with the artillery here. It just goes to show how far advanced they were in those medieval times. Unfortunately, by the Napoleonic period, or unfortunately for the Ottomans, they had stagnated somewhat for a couple of 100 years. On the top left of that page, you can also see a couple of gunners. The guy in the sort of tube hat, he's my favourite one. He is a mortar man. I just love those hats. They look like big licorice all sorts, which it just amuses me. I just thought I'd put them in just for that. Speaking of mortar men, we move on to the fourth page, which is going to be the last page of rules. There's a fifth page which just sums up and has a little bit of designer's notes in there. But yeah, this page, the fourth page, this is the one where we look at mortars. Now, the Ottomans tended not to use howitzers, but they were big fans of mortars. Now, the Sultan had 4 mortar batteries in his mortar corps, and each one of these was made up of 10 tubes or 10 barrels. So again, these were large old units. The size of the mortars depended on which battery you were in, with the largest mortars being in the first battery, and then moving down to the smallest battery in the fourth battery. So I've divided them up. The first battery is the heavy mortar, 2 and 3 are the medium mortars, and the fourth battery are the light mortars. The light one only goes down to like a 5-inch mortar, so it's still pretty big, but they were using mortars like that in World War II, of that size. So, I mean, they weren't humongous. They're certainly not as big as the largest one, which was 25 inches. So that's rather more impressive. You'll see from the stats there, again, these are large batteries. I've given them the pour powder special rule. They've got large battery and they've got fieldworks, the same as the regular artillery, but they have 2 more special rules. For the heavy mortar, they have the siege mortar special rule, and that's an extra -1 to their save. Now, mortars, according to the Black Powder rulebook, always give you a -2 to your armour save, mortars and howitzers. So this just adds an extra -1 to that. So it means that if you get hit by a heavy mortar, you're at -3 to your morale save. So we're seeing an idea here that if you get hit by an Ottoman gun, it's going to be a very, very bad day for you. So much so, if you get hit by the positional artillery, I should have mentioned this earlier on, then you need to take a morale test, because the absolute carnage that one of those cannonballs would cause, I certainly wouldn't stand around to be fired at again, that's for sure. The downside to those large guns, though, is they can't fire every turn, because they need a turn to reload. Anyway, back to the mortars. Now, as I say, they are large batteries, so they have the extra dice for the medium and heavy mortars. They've also got the pour powder, so they're at -1 to hit, of course. They also have a special rule of curtain barrage. Now, this is the second of the 2 real artillery innovations that the Ottomans had. The first one was the crossfire. The second one is the curtain barrage. Now, I toyed with 2 different rules for this. The one I've gone for in the end is that if a Ottoman unit has charged an enemy unit that turn, then that enemy unit can still be fired at by the mortars. And this is to represent this, as we say, this curtain barrage. Now, if you do your closing fire at the start of the combat, then you should have all the penalties from being hit. So if you're disordered, if you're shaken, then you'll apply those penalties to the firing. That's how we tend to do it, but I know there's a bit of ambiguity whether you do it at the charging phase or in the combat phase. So if you do it in the charging phase, then get your opponent to say who he's going to fire his curtain barrage at, and then just maybe hold those ones off until you've done the shooting phase, or maybe just fire the artillery at those before you do the closing fire. Because, it could make a difference. Now, I have said that if you roll a 1, then the shot falls short, and you blow up your own men instead. So you need to do a saving throw as normal. And if you are blown up by your own troops, if that causes a casualty, then the Ottoman players' unit has to take a morale test, because being shelled by your own artillery is even worse than being shelled by enemy artillery. And to be honest, I can't imagine how. But all the accounts I read from the First World War say how much worse it is to be shelled by your own artillery. So there you go, I've added that in. Now, that is quite a strange rule. It breaks quite a lot of fundamental rules of the game. So if you don't like that rule, then I suggest that you can fire at another unit, and if that unit has any hits caused to it, then it can't support in close combat. That's more like what would be... And so in the First World War, where you've got curtain barrages, obviously, that sounds more like a box barrage, which is a different type of thing, and not something that the Ottomans innovated. So, you know, it works. It's a useful thing. It doesn't break so many rules of the game, and it gives them that extra artillery advantage, but it's up to you guys which one you use. I think ultimately the first one's a bit crazy. The fact you can kill your own men is just, it's a bit out there. But you know what? If you're playing Ottomans in the Napoleonic period, you're not there for, yes, what's the studious application? You're not. You're like, yeah, I want dudes with armour and lancers to fight against the guys with muskets. You're there for the lulls, aren't you? So, you know, if you fancy something a bit crazy, then I would recommend that you go with that special rule there. So, that's it for the look at the Ottoman book. This Sunday, hopefully, I'll be doing a how to buy. As I say, I may even be buying myself, because I'll be at Newark at Partisan. So I hope to see you guys there. Thank you very much for watching. If there's been any odd, weird edits in this video, it's because I've had to pause and cough my guts up, so apologies for that one. But I shall see you guys next time. Hopefully this Sunday, it will be our how to buy your Ottoman army. I'm also working on a Max Your Minis video for the Ottomans as well. So I hope to see you then. Catch you next time.